All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, as early viewers of this show know, one of the missions that we've had from the very beginning is to track and bring you important updates in the story of now deceased pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. And the conversation around the case has exploded once again in recent days after the release of a new Netflix documentary called Filthy Rich, which details in horrifying detail the accounts of his survivors of predilections and the many, many people who were complicit in his actions. The entire thing is worth watching, to hear in the words of his victims exactly how he created essentially a sexual pyramid scheme and human trafficking ring, all underneath the nose of some of the most powerful people in the United States, and in some cases with their complicity. Of course, as we know now, he was also let off essentially scot-free by the federal government and by the local police. The documentary brings to light some new and stunning information during an interview with Steve Scully, who served as a former IT contractor at Epstein's private residence in the Virgin Islands, where, as we covered at the time, Virgin Island prosecutors believe he victimized girls as young as 11, according to the testimony of those who saw victims depart Epstein's plane. Now, Scully told the documentarians, quote, "I was on the island probably 100 times. I was ultimately in every single building," and then noted at some point during his employment, from 1999 to 2005, quote, "I saw Bill Clinton sitting with Jeffrey on the living room porch area, which was Jeffrey's favorite spot," adding, "I saw no other guests there at the time at all. I just thought, hey, wow, Jeffrey's sitting with Bill Clinton." Scully's revelation is an absolute bombshell, because he is now the second person to place Clinton on the sexual predator's island. The first was Virginia Giuffre. She's one of the most prominent Epstein accusers, or survivors really, and Giuffre is famous for implicating Prince Andrew, but previously testified in court documents, quote, "I remember having a dinner with Clinton. He was there. I never saw him do anything improper. I wish, he would just come clean about yeah, I was there. So what? Who cares? I didn't see anything going on." Clinton's spokesperson vehemently denied the allegation, saying, quote, "This was a lie the first time it was told, and it isn't true today, no matter how many times it's repeated." One thing that is not a lie is the verifiable fact that Bill Clinton was friends with Jeffrey Epstein and on at least a couple of occasions traveled aboard his private jet, which was nicknamed the Lolita Express. I find it just so interesting the mainstream media has no curiosity whatsoever to investigate these new claims. So beyond the Clinton revelation, the documentary doesn't break all that much new ground, so much as it gives a voice to the previously trodden down victims of Epstein's terror. It should remind us all, though, that Epstein's alleged co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, continues to gallivant around the world, jet-setting from powerful person's residence to powerful person's residence, without ever once, as far as we know, publicly ever being stopped by U.S. authorities. And she is most certainly not in U.S. custody, where any reasonable person can say that she absolutely should be for her participation in these crimes. Worse, and Prince Andrew, who basically had to retire from public life after a disastrous BBC interview in which he tried to deny ever exploiting a young Virginia Giuffre, has refused cooperation with the FBI over questions of his own involvement in Epstein's crimes, despite saying in November, quote, "I am willing to help any appropriate law enforcement agency with their investigations." And I'm just now speaking of Epstein's direct co-conspirators. What about those who covered for him in the media? Remember Amy Robach, the Good Morning America anchor who was caught on tape admitting that her network quashed an investigation into Epstein to protect her chances of getting an interview with Will and Kate?
I've had the story for 3 years. We would not put it on the air. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. She had pictures. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton, we had everything.
Since that bombshell revelation, not a single executive at ABC News or Disney, their parent company, has answered for it. In fact, the only person who has been fired as a result of that scandal is a poor young production assistant who clipped that moment and saved it to an internal ABC system. She swears she didn't even leak it, but ABC made an example of getting her fired from CBS News, even though she didn't work for them anymore. That is the Epstein story in a nutshell. The highest level co-conspirators get off scot-free. Epstein himself was largely free up until his mysterious death. And the media who covered him for nearly 2 decades is uninterested in investigating these new claims. The people who've suffered so far are those who dared to draw attention to his crimes, or the victims themselves who are now fighting for restitution in a court of law. wanted to make sure we brought that story to everybody, Crystal. I mean, it's amazing, especially on the Bill Clinton front. I mean, this is now two separate observations that Bill Clinton was on the private island of Jeffrey Epstein, where we know for almost a near fact that he victimized young girls from all over the world. And, Clinton's spokesperson says it's absolutely not true. But Virginia Giuffre, we found to be highly credible. I mean, this is the person who accused Prince Andrew of sleeping with her and basically being provided to her by Ghislaine Maxwell whenever she was a young age of 17. Prince Andrew says, I've never met her before, despite the fact that there's literally a photo of his arm wrapped around her while she's a young girl, which we've put up here on the show previously. Huge development, and nobody seems all that interested. Even when writing this, the people I have to go to see who reported on it, The Sun tabloid,
right?
Like New York Mag, Intelligence. Like, there's no mainstream media coverage. There's a blackout on the Bill Clinton claim.
And even the way the claim is unearthed, it didn't come through mainstream media outlets. Basically, when he died, it was like, okay, well, enough on that. We can all move on. Nothing to see here. They had all of their reporters lined up, ready to go. His trial, all of that was going to garner massive coverage because you couldn't avoid it. You couldn't ignore it.
Right.
But the moment that he dies, then they all have the excuse to, okay, let's move on. Let's talk about the next thing. And look, there's a lot going on, right? Let's be clear. There's a pandemic. There's mass unemployment. There's riots in American cities. There's a lot going on. But I think it is incredibly telling that it takes someone outside of mainstream media to go and actually try to do the digging to turn up who knew what when. I mean, that's really the thing. How deep does this thing go? Who all was involved? How complicit were people? What did people know? Because, and look, the man got a sweetheart deal in Florida, got to basically hang out at his office.
6 days a week.
Yeah, 6
from
days
the Palm
a week.
Beach County Jail.
Right, and even after that is still getting invites and having dinners with some of the highest elite level, richest people in America. So, I think it's kind of an important story for people to understand that network and who was aware of what was going on. And this is a little, added piece to that puzzle.
There's no curiosity it implicates too many people. It implicates reporters, mainstream media, the richest people in America. I mean, remember, there's photos of Bill Gates hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein. And Bill Gates was like, I didn't really know who he was. He was telling me all this stuff about he was going to give money to the foundation. Okay, but he snookered his way into the highest levels of wealth, hanging out with the former president. I mean, hanging out with everybody, every God knows where, donating money to the MIT lab, rehabilitating his image. The man had money. Also, where the hell did all this money come from? I still actually do not have a clear answer to that question.
No, nobody does.
Nobody has a clear answer to that question. Why wasn't he jailed in the first time? Were intelligence agencies involved? I mean, we covered here Michael Baden, that famous, I forget what's coroner, he conducts autopsies, who says he's never seen a suicide hanging like this, like that's ever happened before in all of his years of covering these several instances. We have the involvement of a former president. I mean, in any other way, this should be a massive story that this man is coming forward and say, hey, I saw him there. Bill Clinton should have to prove that it never happened.
And what does this individual have, to gain from
nothing? He's an IT contractor, right? And being interviewed on this, and he's basically trying to make amends. You're like, yeah, I saw some really weird stuff going on there. The Virgin Islands report, which we covered here, an 11-year-old walking off the plane. I mean, who are the people who are providing this? You think the pilots didn't know? Shouldn't somebody be, making sure that they were complicit in a human trafficking ring and making sure they're brought to justice? And the worst of all is Ghislaine Maxwell, who is scot-free. I mean, is there anything more chilling than that Page 6 headline about how her powerful friends
are protecting her?
That's crazy.
Around the globe.
Literally. I mean, she's literally talking about housing in rich people's houses all over the world, jet setting here and here. I think the last time she was allegedly seen was in California at an In-N-Out. So apparently she's on U.S. soil. I mean, love In-N-Out, but anyway, but she was seen on U.S. soil. I mean, why is she not stopped at a port of entry? Why is she not in FBI custody?
Exactly.
And Prince Andrew, as we said, we know that whenever Virginia came forward, that he emailed Ghislaine that they were in contact, being like, hey, I have some questions for you. Now, he's just retired because the palace shoved him into a hole and was like, don't come back out for the next 10 years after he disgraced himself in that interview. I mean, just the whole thing. It's a story that I can never drop. And it's because too many people have too much to lose for so much of it coming out. And from the very beginning, it revealed how it just goes all the way up to the highest levels of the Department of Justice, to the criminal system.
Right.
I mean, even in New York City, when he was living in his crazy, disgusting pedophile house.
Exactly. I mean, it's a story about power. It's a story about complicity. It's a story about money. It's a story about our criminal justice system, all of that. And for some reason, most of the outlets in this country don't have much interest in talking about it.
We'll continue to try.
Next on Rising, can a former Marine turned asparagus farmer with progressive ideals and some strong endorsements unseat Senator Mitch McConnell? We're going to hear from Mike Breuer when Rising returns.